Hello, everybody. So we are now live on the air, Google Hangout on the air, and I am coming to you. My name is Craig Villarrubia from Hawaii, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to have everyone join me in this celebration of Christmas. So today's topic is the message of Christmas, and I'm really excited about it. Christmas has always been a fun, if not the funnest, holiday for me. I know as a child, I always used to anticipate and welcome in Christmas. You know, the funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other day, is when I was young and I would look forward to Christmas. And Christmas would come and I would get all these gifts. And then Christmas will obviously come and go like everything else. And come January, I would be thinking, oh my God, Christmas is over. And I would have this whole year to wait for Christmas again. And it felt like forever. Forever. And so as a child, and you know, I'd come to January and February, and of course I'd see a toy or two that I want that I saw on television. I would say to my parents that, you know, get me this toy or this. And they were like, okay, we'll get it to you for Christmas. And I think, oh my God, Christmas, 12 months away. It was kind of like, you know, if you remember, for me in school also, you know, you start off at 7:30, 8 a.m. and in the mind, you know, you'll be getting out at 3 p.m. And so the day was so long. Oh my God, 6 hours later. And the irony, or the funny thing is, now as an adult, it seems like Christmas is always around the corner. It's like boom, 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 boom. So I find some humor in that, and I take it to be that as adults, you know, our minds are just so consumed, or our attention is so consumed with so many things that time seems to slip out of our hands, as opposed to when we are children, we're not as filled with so much stuff. So our beingness is always very present, and in the present moment, time really isn't moving because time isn't there. So I just think it's a funny contrast, the way we see and view time and the holiday, in my case, differently than when we were kids. So here we are with Christmas, and Christmas is a beautiful symbol. You know, A Course in Miracles talks about symbols and the importance of symbols, in the sense that symbols are concepts, and we live in a world of symbols. So our experience in the world, or the way we relate to the world, is through symbols, whether it be the symbols of people, whether it be symbols of language. We use it for communication. So symbols play a huge part in this world. And what the Course would teach us is, as long as we believe in symbols, right? As long as we believe in symbols, the symbols can be used in one of two ways. Either they support the idea of separation, or they align us with ideas of truth. So Christmas, just like any other symbol, and its symbols can do the same thing. They can align us with what is true, or they can align us with ideas of separation. And I think Christmas is probably, for me, the most direct symbol of what's true. If we think about Christmas being a symbol of innocence, the symbol of Christ. And if we step back for a moment, we take a look at some of the symbols. I will take a look first at the symbol of the Christmas trees, the love decorating Christmas trees. And so when we think about our experience in this world, when we are experiencing a sense of suffering, when we are going through hardship, when we are in our deepest fear, what we want to know is that we're going to be okay, and that we're going to be able to survive the despair, or survive the seeming occurrences that are happening to us. And the beautiful thing about the Christmas tree is that that's what the Christmas tree symbolizes. Here you have this evergreen that survives the harshness of the winters. You know, you go out to get a tree, if you actually go out and get a tree, you know, here's this green, fragrant, rich in fragrance, this green tree that symbolizes life in the midst of the harshest conditions. And so we, despite of what our circumstances look like or what they are, when we're going through hardship, life is undisturbed. And so in many ways, the Christmas tree symbolizes life despite the conditions or the happenings that are transpiring around us. So there's beauty in the symbolism of the Christmas tree. And throughout all these symbols, you got the light. We have the light in the candle, the light on the Christmas trees that we lay out, and then we have the light or the star. And we all know what the star symbolizes. The star in many ways symbolizes guidance, right? So the kings were to find Christ by following the light. And if there's anything that the Course would teach us is we will find salvation by following guidance, following Holy Spirit, following the light, we find Christ. And that's really the practice of the Course, that the Course is extending, this idea of coming back to presence, coming back to the life that's undisturbed despite conditions that are happening in front of us. And that is the light. And the light is the light. It's unaffected. You know, if we have a ray of light, you know, there's nothing that is going to affect the light. You can swing at the light, you can throw stuff at the light. It's unaffected. And so we're coming back to the life that we are, that is unaffected by all that seems to be happening to us. And this is the practice of following the Holy Spirit, to come into that recognition. And then of course we have the symbol of the baby Jesus, and we all know what the baby symbolizes, right? It symbolizes the innocence that we've seemed to have lost. It symbolizes the innocence that we have seemed to have forgotten about. And so we've forgotten about this innocence, and we've adapted an idea or belief in separation. And so Christmas is really about bringing us back to what is true. That is the symbol of Christmas. Now, I did mention that all symbols can be used in one of two ways, either to perpetuate this idea of separation or to remind us of what is true. And so you can look at Christmas from another way. If you look at it from the way we commercialize Christmas, you know, the frustration, the sacrifice, and you know, getting gifts. We get caught up in this idea of trying to maintain a self-concept. And so I remember there was a time in my experience where I'd make a whole list of all the gifts I had to get for people, and I would question, you know, am I getting them a gift if they're going to get me a gift and I have to return the gift? And so I used to get caught up in that and spending a lot of money. I would spend tons of money on getting gifts for my partner, because that's what, you know, you're supposed to do. And not that there's anything wrong with giving very expensive gifts, but when they're given out of a sense of obligation, or out of a sense of out of reciprocity. You know, I do remember giving gifts thinking, wait, you know, my gift I gave you was better than the gift that you gave me, which was highlighting the reciprocity. So again, you know, the symbol of Christmas will be used in one of two ways, and it's important to look at it so we can recognize some of the dysfunction that we've adapted along the way with Christmas, and recognize it. And there's no guilt in it. You know, that's the way the world teaches us. And in many ways, Christmas is taught to us at a very early age. We all know this, right? We all were taught the story of Christmas. I was watching a video yesterday of one of my many favorite spiritual teachers, and he was talking about how children are taught this idea of Santa Claus. You know, we're all taught this idea of Santa Claus, and children don't question it. Right? We don't question, you know, our parents tell us that there is a Santa Claus, and so we believe it, and, you know, the gifts are under the tree, there's the evidence, and so we adapt this belief in Santa Claus. And he was just using it as an analogy for how the world is really training and teaching us about this sense of separation and the reality of the way the world works. We're taught that, but at no point is the child in a position to really question everything. So it's always accepted as reality. And so just as a child would believe in the falsity of Santa Claus, we too believe in a lot of false ideas and concepts living in this world. So I thought it was an interesting analogy. By the way, the other thing too is there's nothing wrong with it. You know, a lot of times we get caught, or I've gotten caught in a sense of guilt because I see myself buying into some of the ways of the world. And this is a message of innocence, no guilt. So just as a child is innocent in believing in Santa Claus, we too are innocent when we're caught up in the way of the world's thinking. Our responsibility, however, is when we become aware of it, is to accept the atonement for ourselves, which simply means to question it and be willing to be wrong about what we're believing in and thinking in. The other thing that it made me realize, or as I was listening to that analogy, is, you know, a lot of us sometimes recognize the illusory ways of the world, or what tempts us in the world and what's illusion, and, you know, it isn't our responsibility or job to tell everybody the world is an illusion. I remember going through a phase in my experience where I thought I had to tell everybody that the world's illusion. And really what we're doing, it's like telling a child that Santa Claus isn't real. You know? It's like, we don't do that. We don't go around telling kids that Santa Claus isn't. Why don't we do that? Because there's an innocence behind it. Right? The child is innocent for believing in Santa Claus because they never had a choice in the situation. That was all that they know. So we don't ruin the illusion for the child. We actually play into it at times, right? You know, a child tells us, look what Santa Claus gave me for Christmas. Oh, you must have been such a good boy or a good girl or what have you, right? So we don't tell them, oh, by the way, Santa Claus says, no, we don't do that. We come to it with love, right? So that's an important lesson, because in the world, we see a lot that may not look like love, right? So people may be caught up in their own fears and their own beliefs, or it appears that they're getting caught up in their own fears and beliefs. And then sometimes the spiritual righteousness in us want to say, oh, you know, they don't get it, or, you know, somehow their judgment is wrong. So no, in doing that, we're only by doing that, by judging that, we're only further creating a further sense of distance from others. And so we're maintaining this idea of separation, or we're judging others to define ourselves as something better, as something spiritual. And so that's not what this teaching is about. This isn't about, because there's a recognition or perception of truth, or perception that there isn't separation, that we're here to then further define ourselves as separate by believing we know something that other people don't. No, we're all in this together. So even in our approach to others that seem to be aligning with a different thought system, or seem to be aligning with fear, our job is to come over or show up just as you would for the child who believes in Santa Claus. Oh, really? So there's an appreciation for the story, not an intention to make someone else wrong, which is really just the ego coming in through the back door. So I thought that analogy around Christmas and about Santa Claus and about what's unfolding, very helpful to look at and to appreciate how it lands in our experience. I also thought it would be a good idea for those of you who have not been here with me before, or haven't sat down in this hangout. I'm probably just gonna, my mouth is probably gonna keep on moving and talking for about another 10 minutes. And then I'm just going to open it up for everybody to share on anything regarding the topic, or A Course in Miracles, or anything at all. But I'm reading from a section of the Course which talks a little bit about Christmas. There's very few places in the Course that I'm aware of that Christmas is actually even spoken of, but this is in Chapter 15, Section 11, Christmas is the End of Suffering. I won't read the whole thing, but I thought there were some key lines here to remind us. The first one, in the first paragraph, says, "Fear not to recognize the whole idea of sacrifice as solely of your making, and seek not safety by attempting to protect yourself where it is not." So fear not to recognize the whole idea of sacrifice as solely of your making. So what is sacrifice but bargaining, right? When we sacrifice, we give up something for something else. So there's a sense of bargaining. And so that is of our making, and it is actually a cornerstone of separation, because there's an idea of ourselves as separate from the world, which inherently carries a desire to fulfill a sense of lack. And so there's almost like it's not almost like, it really is a scheming thought system that's trying to fulfill what it believes it lacks. And so it carries this idea of sacrifice. And there is there's a sense of guilt and a sense of, a deep sense of guilt for which it believes to be true, that we've done something wrong. And so it also hides from the world. But this thought system that is perpetuating the sense of hiding, this thought system that's perpetuating the sense of sacrifice, is trying to find safety. It says, and seek not safety by attempting to protect yourself from where it is not. It tries to find safety in its capacity or its belief in control, right? So the way we bargain and manipulate is we try to control our circumstance. We want to stay in what is predictable. And so this idea of controlling our safety will keep us in a sense of suffering, because we can't control the safety of the body, right? The body's going to deal with whatever the body's going to deal with. And it's not the body that's going to free us from our guilt. You know, of course, the miracle says, do you want freedom of the body or do you want freedom of the mind? Freedom of the body will keep us on a perpetual seeking, a perpetual search, in which case we will sacrifice. You have to give up this to have that, right? You know, I live in Hawaii. You know, the thought system of separation would say, oh, you had to give up being, you know, the pleasures of being in a big city, or if I leave Hawaii, I got to give up the pleasures of being, you know, in a quiet place. So the mind is always perpetuating this idea of trying to control predictability, trying to maintain a sense of safety through this idea of sacrifice. The sign of Christmas is a star, a light in darkness. So the sign of Christmas is a star in the light of darkness. So in this seeking, there will always be suffering. And so what Christmas is symbolizing is a way out. See it not outside yourself, but shining in the heaven within, and accept it as a sign the time of Christ has come. So it's redirecting this thought system, which is always looking to the outside for satisfaction, always looking to the outside to solve its problems, right? This thought system of sacrifice comes with a lot of problems. So it's saying, seek not outside yourself, but to recognize heaven is within. And accept the sign, or accept Christ, the time of Christ has come. So when's the time of Christ? The time of Christ is now. It's always now. And so it appears as if there's this moment of Christmas every year, and the beauty in that is basically the symbolism in it. But the truth, or really where it's pointing, is that this time of Christ is always right now. It is a complete withdrawal, or is withdrawing attention from all timeline, right? Because the ego, the self-concept, the thought of me being separate is always on a timeline, which is always planning, and it's always seeking, and it's always seeing salvation in the future. That is all part of the planning and the protecting and the sacrifice. Because when I plan my future, when I'm like invested in the future, and I'm invested in my future salvation, what I've sacrificed is Christ in me now, right? So if I see myself on a timeline with future happiness, I'm sacrificing the present Christ now, the experience of Christ right now, because I'm living in the mind, I'm living in my self-concept. So what this is saying is to accept Christmas, the time of Christ, now, the sign of Christ within, in heaven, here. It'll never be in the future. And it demands nothing. So the beauty of life does not demand anything. We don't have to do anything. That is why the Course says, I need do nothing, because life is what you are, what we're seeking, which is really the innocence. What we're seeking is the innocence, our true inheritance. We want to rid ourselves of the guilt, or we want to see ourselves beyond the guilt, and that is right here. It's always been here. I always refer to a favorite Course lesson, which is God's voice speaks to me all through the day. And for such a long time, I couldn't figure this one out, because it's like, you know, I don't hear God. Where is God? If He's speaking to me all through the day, I must be trying to interpret Him through a different language, because, sheesh, I can't figure it out. I don't hear Him. Where is God talking? And then I would have experiences where, there'd be synchronicities or symbols show up, or someone would say the right thing. I'm like, oh, there's God. God, I needed an answer for something. So God would show up in a symbol. And that is quite beautiful, because that begins to open up the mind to everything being able to talk to us or communicate with us, because everything really is us. But in any ways, the symbols would show up, but there would still be moments where it's like, where's God? There's no symbol in front of me that I can translate. And so this questioning of where's God and why don't I hear God's voice began to emerge, or there was a recognition that I had to acknowledge if God's voice speaks to me all through the day, I have to acknowledge what is with me all through the day. And when I stopped looking for God's voice and only being open to what is with me all through the day, what I recognized is that there is a definitionless sense of existence or awareness that is with me all through the day. And this definitionless awareness, or definitionless sense of existence, has always been with me. In fact, I can't remember a time of it not being there. And it never ages, right? This definitionless experience that I'm pointing to has never aged. And that definitionless awareness, that precedes everything. It precedes any kind of thought. It precedes even the idea of myself when I wake up in the morning. It's like the first thing, whatever that is definitionless and is clean and clear. So here's the Course saying that God's voice speaks to me all through the day. The only thing that I can think of, or the only thing that's in my awareness that is with me all through the day, is this definitionless awareness. So it must be that is the portal to God's voice. It is the direct experience of presence or awareness. And words are always tough to use, but if we pause for a moment, oh, wait a second, and you start to think about, wait, the message of the Course. What is the message of the Course? What did we start talking about? We start talking about the light. And this idea, by following the light, we will come to our Christ-like self. So, and the light is always there. So what this is really bringing us back to is this idea that the presence, this definitionless awareness, is the portal, is spirit that brings us back to Christ. And what we find there is pristine, is clean. It's not tarnished by ideas of separation. It's peace. And it's here. It's here. But then the mind, of course, we'll end this Google chat, and the mind will, of course, get back to what it thinks it needs to do and prepare for what they'd run. And that's fine, and that's okay. This is a mind training tool. So the appearance is that we have to train our mind. But the moment that we're aware of what's true, the moment that we're questioning or asking, where is God's voice, it's done. Salvation is in an instant. We come back. Oh, wait. There's this sense of okayness that's never left me. It appears that I forgot. But even in the moment that there's a recognition that I forgot, it's done because you've remembered. Right? So we're training the mind to remember always until time itself dissolves, right? Because if we were in true remembrance always, the concept of time goes with it. Because there isn't a moment we're out of what is always, or what is true, or our Christ-likeness. And so everything that's happening around us is accepted as perfect. There's no judging. There's no idea of oneself as separate from anything. And so the mind itself is awakened. But it's not a personal mind. It feels that way in the beginning. Right? It feels like we're training a personal mind, but this is a whole mind. I mean, here we are in a Google Hangout, and it's a full room, and there's people viewing us. This is not a coincidence. There's no This is perfect. This is beautiful. Even if you think, there's something that I'm saying that you don't agree with or you don't understand, even if that's the case, that's part of the symphony that's happening. And so this becomes a testament to a whole mind, right? Because there's one whole mind that's dreaming this all up, that's waking up. So Christmas itself is given by the mind for the mind to wake up. The symbol of Christmas is given by the mind to the mind. So here we are. I'm Craig seemingly talking about Christmas. Where did that come from? Not for me. It's given by the mind for all of us to join in this awakening, to come back to our Christ-like nature, our inheritance, which is this pristine, emptiness, and not emptiness in a bad way, in a glorious way, empty of judgment, empty of concepts, empty of ideas of separation. The Course itself is a symbol, right? The Course itself is given to us by the mind to bring us back. And that's quite beautiful, because when we start to think of how the mind works in that way, and by the way, these two, what I'm saying is also a concept. So it's not truth; it's just helpful in looking at it this way. But as we think about the grace, feeding us what we need to awaken, then we recognize, again, I mentioned it before, the Course teaches I need do nothing. And what the Course is basically saying is, as we allow grace to give us or lead us, we don't have to do anything. Grace is going to show us our openness and our willingness to be wrong about everything that we thought is all that's really required. And it's a very present requirement. It's right here, simply right here. Am I willing to be wrong about the idea that I'm actually a person? Am I willing to be wrong about the idea that I'm separate from others? Am I willing to be wrong that that I am in it, that I'm limited by my body? That's it. I don't have to prove myself that I'm not a body. Who would be proving that but the ego, but the body? But I just have to hold this in mind right now, present experience, that I'm willing to be wrong about what I thought I was. And typically when we're suffering, we're thinking of ourselves as guilty. And so the whole message of Christmas is innocence. So here we are. We find ourselves December 19th, Christmas coming in a few days. Are we willing to allow that symbol to bring us back to what is true? That we are here, we are innocent, we are okay, and that everything that says we're not okay is simply showing up in the form of a thought. And these are thoughts we think. So they're not even our thoughts. So what the Course says in this chapter says, this Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt you. Let yourself be healed completely that you may join with Him in healing. And let us celebrate our release together by releasing everyone with us. So we are invited to step into what I was just sharing, to step into the presence of our innocence right now. Not in thought, but in direct experience. Who and what are we? With the willingness to be wrong about thinking that we're bodies, then where does that leave us? And how do we know? Course in Miracles talks about perception and knowledge. So in this experience of being on a spiritual path, we have a lot of perceptions of what's true, right? So we hear, we are extensions of God. We are sons of God. We hear that we are innocent. So we perceive that. But do we know knowledge? Is there an experience of truth? And that opportunity is always right now, and it's always immediate. And so let's investigate right now. Right now, this moment.
Okay.
What is direct experience? Someone wanted to share. Rick, join in.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, I'm like bouncing off my seat, because I had an experience, just real quick. I'll go through a real quick story and then I'll kind of get to the point. But yesterday, I got out of bed, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I felt this anger, right? And I'm like, as soon as I opened my eyes, I'm like, what is this? And I just tried to like ignore it and got ready for work or whatever. And the more I tried to tell myself, no, I don't want this, I want peace, it just grew because afterwards I realized what I was doing, and I'll get to that. But so the more I try to fight with, the contrast between what I want and what I'm experiencing, grew what I didn't want. Right? So it was kind of crazy. By the time I got to work, I was literally almost in a panic attack. My body felt like it was just going to fly apart. I was a train wreck. And I just said, God, help me with this, right? Because I can't do it. And I just heard like this little voice. It was like my own voice, just an idea form. You've been training for this. Now do it. Be still. I was like, okay, well, I was still driving, so I couldn't, close my eyes right then. But as soon as I got to work, parked the car, man, I just put my head on the steering wheel, and I'm like, okay. And interestingly enough, the day before, I heard a meditation, and it went like this. So if you guys want to follow along and do this as I'm going through it real quick, we can have actually that direct experience right now, like what he's talking about. I don't mean to take over your show, Craig, but this was just such a powerful realization for me that I want to take the opportunity to share it so that you guys can, so that we can quit talking about it, right, and have it, right? We can talk about it all day, for weeks, for years, but the point is not to talk about it, but to have it for ourselves. So I'd like to just, if that's okay, I would like to just have everybody close their eyes and just say to yourself, hi, my name is your name, and I live in wherever you live, and I do whatever for a living, and just feel what that feels like to have that story. And as you get a sense of, hi, my name is Rick, I live in Fond du Lac, I drive a truck, and I'm a Course in Miracles minister through Pathways of Light, there's a weight, kind of a weight there. So what if I would shorten that story just a little bit? Hi, my name is Rick, I live in Fond du Lac, I drive a truck. We'll shorten it a little bit more. Hi, my name is Rick, I live in Fond du Lac. And each time you take something off the table a little bit, try to feel in your body the sense that something has been lifted away, right? Don't think about it. Just try to get the emotional feel in your body, where that release as you let each piece come away. And now we'll go, hi, my name is Rick, or my name is Craig. And see if that doesn't feel just a little bit simpler, right? Less complex. And when you can get a sense of that, see if you can just feel what it feels like. Just say, I am. And just tell yourself, I am. And see if you can feel what that actually feels like. I am. Nothing added to it. And I'm going to mute myself out. And Craig, when you're ready to come back in, go ahead.
Thank you, Rick. That was beautiful, and it tied right into this idea. This Christmas, give the Holy Spirit everything that will hurt you. And as you were talking us through our self-concepts, really all self-concepts would hurt us, because all of them would define us as something different than the definitionlessness that we are. So thank you, Rick, for experientially walking us backwards from a very defined position to a very very free, a sense of freeness and openness and definitionless, for which the Christ mind is really symbolizing the innocence. There's what's wrong in the freedom? There's nothing wrong in the freedom. So thank you, and I will continue. There's a line on paragraph 4 that says, guilt is the condition of sacrifice, as peace is the condition for the awareness of your relationship with God, which is really your relationship with love, which is really your identity as love. So this is an opportunity to let go of any sense of guilt, which is synonymous with any sense of separation. When we experience or believe ourselves to be separate or have a sense of guilt, we are primarily caught up in, and I mentioned this before, a sense of bargaining and control. And so the Course says, as long as you perceive the body as your reality, so long as you perceive yourself as lonely and deprived. So believing ourselves to be a body, we will believe ourselves to be separate from this definitionless love, this abstract sense of being. That doesn't mean that in the appearance of things we won't see a body, and it doesn't mean that thoughts won't come. Rick did a wonderful job of sharing from the heart about this thought that he had, that he wanted to get rid of. The suffering isn't in the thought. The thought is just like anything else. In fact, the Course would say, we give everything the meaning it has for us. That includes the thought. So as a thought of disturbance comes up, it could be a thought of judgment, it could be a thought of somebody else or a transgression. It's not the thought that's a problem. It's the relationship we think we have with the thought. This idea that that is my thought. Or the idea, I don't want that thought. And so now we are in opposition with life itself. That's always unfolding and always happening. There's a line in the Course that says you are reviewing what's already passed. So as life is unfolding, as grace is doing its thing, the thought system of separation is always narrating what's unfolding. And that's just what it does. It's impersonal. It has nothing to do with what we are. It's just an impersonal narration. But as long as we believe in this narration, it seems to continue. But the beautiful thing that I in my experience, can speak to is as awareness is brought into the truth of my identity, which is this definitionless okayness that has never changed, that is never away from me, that's always been with me, this voice that's always talking to me, as that becomes the prominent or predominant home, then the narrative voice does seem to dissolve. None of which is of a personal doing. None of which is a personal doing. So as they come up, they come up. So as long as we perceive ourselves as a body, they will come up. That will be our reality. You will perceive yourself as lonely and deprived. And what says we're lonely and deprived? That narrative story that says we are separate from the world, we're separate from grace, separate from what's unfolding. And so then we get caught up and we invest in the bargaining. And that's what sacrifice is. Sacrifice is bargaining. We're trying to make a better story for ourselves in the world, but the story is perfect and it can't be any different. Because the mind, as we discussed before, the mind will give us exactly what we need, including the symbol of Christmas and including the symbol of this course. Paragraph 7, in the holy instant, the condition of love is met, for minds are joined without the body's interference. And where there is communication, there is peace. To communicate is to be in communion with all. We are life itself. So we allow it to unfold as that. We allow it to be the innocence. We allow people to be innocent. And we're reminded of our own innocence as we welcome that. So I feel to just pause for a moment. There's another line that I want to read, but I'll save that for a little bit towards the end. And just kind of open it up to anybody who may want to share or have a question or whatever's unfolding is welcome.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Kind of a loudmouth, like to talk anyways. Yeah, like I said, that experience that I had yesterday just showed me again that, before the show started, I shared with Craig that I did have a mystical experience or a non-dual experience or whatever, and that happened in like July of 2012. And for the next couple of years after that, I've been like chasing that experience. I wanted to have that again because just the sense of a personal responsibility for what I did or what I need to do, or all this thoughts was just gone. And the sense that I wasn't separate from anything was just such a beautiful experience. Everything that we talk about in A Course in Miracles, every time I think about that experience, like, yeah, I experienced that. Right? And I've been beating myself up for the last 2 years or whatever, right? Because I'm not experiencing that anymore. I want to get back to it. But what I'm starting to find as I listen to myself, even talking now, right, that there's this I that wants to have that experience. And I'm just starting to kind of understand, even if it's just the intellectual understanding, that's the open door, right? That's the crack. That there's this I that wants it. But when I had that experience, that I was not here. And it's to even hear myself say that, it's like, okay, so I'm feeling always, right, the balance or the contrast between what was, right, and what's happening now, what my experience is now. And I think I'm getting a sense that there's that recognition that that's what I've been doing my whole life, is comparing something that was with something that is now, thereby creating that conflict. Right? There's just that little crack of recognition. And it's what else I'm experiencing. I just want to share this, that I spend a lot of time alone. Like I said, I drive a truck, so 12, 14 hours a day. I got nobody to talk to but this guy, right? Blah, 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 all the time. But what's interesting is when I'm doing that, right, I get a chance to hear what my own thoughts are. And as I study the Course, there's no one to argue with but myself, and I can recognize when that's happening and go like, oh, I'm doing that again. Or when my mind, a lot of times I'll be so into thinking about all this stuff that I'll miss an exit, right? And then I'll have to make my trip longer right? Because I was not actually present. I was in my head thinking about something else, not paying attention to what I'm doing. What oh, I wasn't present with my. I was off in, my thought system. And it's just I can just see how call it the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call that, right? But for me, it just feels like my own recognition of my willingness to have a different experience than the one I'm having, which is in itself already the conflict. So the whole thing is about keeping that engine going, and I'm just starting to get a crack of how that's working. And then I'll talk about this and go, oh, and I think I've got it so well, and then I'll have like a conversation with my wife, right? And boom, we're in an argument or a disagreement. I'm like, how did that happen? I don't want this with you. I want, I want us to have a nice, loving relationship, but that's not what's happening. So already there's that argument with what's happening, and the story in my head that this isn't what I want. I want something else. It's just amazing to watch how those two things, right, which is the duality, can work, and I'm here to see it. I'm just here to witness it. I don't. But the problem that I'm seeing myself do is that instead of just witnessing it and staying in that backward position, right, stepping back, I get hooked. I get hooked quick before I even know it happened, and then 3 seconds later, or 5 minutes later, or the next day. Usually, it doesn't take me that long anymore. But it just, oh, I did it again. I had bad thoughts about them, and then I'll feel guilty because that's not what I want. So it's and wow, just talking to you guys about that experience and what's going on for me shows me, just listening to myself shows me how my mind is working, how that unhealed part, by telling myself, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. Yeah, you do want it, or I wouldn't be experiencing it. And that's what the Course keeps saying. And I'm like, oh. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that that shift is starting to come from me. Man, it feels good. And even when it feels bad, right? That's okay for it to feel bad. And I'm telling myself it's not, which is why I think that was such a powerful experience to go through that little meditation, because it was a helpful tool, yet another step.
Danke, har I brug for hjælp?
For me to have that recognition that no matter what happens, it's okay. It's when I get caught up in the story of I don't want this that the trouble starts. And I'm just starting to recognize that every time I tell myself I don't want this, that's the fundamental argument we have with life. I don't want it. And I'm done. I guess because otherwise I'll just repeat myself and I'll talk forever because I get excited. There's my mute button. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's quite beautiful. It's what was coming to mind as you were sharing is, life is going to get you no matter what. There's no running away from life. And that's good news, because really what that means is that salvation is guaranteed. Ain't no one being left out. But for the thought system or the separate self-concept or the idea that I'm a body or I'm the ego, that's very threatening. And so what the ego wants is it's always wanting to get something, including the ideas of spirituality and including the ideas of enlightenment, including some sense of ownership or intellectual knowing or knowledge. But the ego can't get it. And so what happens is life as it is always going to hit us at the knees, always going to knock. So the moment we think we got something, boom, life is going to hit us at the knees, and we'll find out that, you know, it's even deeper than that. Like he was saying, there's still stuff to heal, you know, something, boom. But that's just the way life is, and it eventually becomes obvious that there's nothing you can hold on to. Ultimately, the state of mind that is emerging is ultimately that we can't hold on to anything. Nothing. No symbol, no concept, nothing. Which is very threatening to the ego, because the ego is made out of something. Right? It's made up of thoughts. It's made up of judgments. You were talking about this idea of comparison. It lives in comparison. How would I know what I am as a person unless I was comparing myself to these outer circumstances or things? So people serve my experience to define who I am. So my partner defines who I am, my friends, my enemies, my opinions on the world, my everything that I have a perceptual relationship with. Everything is very special. It's a whole bunch of chapters in the Course of Miracles about specialness. They define me, and it's all through comparisons. But eventually that all has to dissolve in order for our true identity to emerge or come into our awareness as truth. And so we'll go back to direct experience of right now. We go back to, you know, that is the innocence in a baby, going back to Christmas. A baby knows not of comparison. A baby knows not of an outside world. Its direct experience is experience of really nothing and everything at the same time, simultaneously. It's pristine, it's clean. And we don't even have, and the funny thing is that doesn't even have to be communicated. You know, we have baby calves out here in the pasture. And it's funny because, you know, and we know this, even science tells us that the babies have these characteristics that without communication other animals can also kind of understand. And that may be a stretch because they're not really understanding anything, but there's a recognition of the innocence, a baby. It's the big eyes, you know? It's the soft skin. It's the fur on these, you know, these baby cows. You know, we have the big cows and we have the baby calves. The big cows, you put your hand on their hair and it's a little coarse and, you know, it's not pleasant. These babies, oh my God, I'm like all in their hair and putting them, because it's so soft. It's unspoiled. This is all symbolic, of course. But just coming back to the portal of right now, the innocence has not left us. But the innocence has nothing to do with behavior. It has nothing to do with what's happening in form. And we can't get innocence in form. So there's nothing to do in form that is going to create the innocence for us. The innocence is already there. It's what we are. But the mind in its effort, or the thought system in its effort or attempt to make for an experience of separation, is always going to use comparisons, including, you know, the comparison of spiritual experiences. You know, it's going to put us on a timeline. It's defined by the wanting. I want that spiritual experience again. But no one really had that. The irony is that the experience itself was never had by a person anyway. Just as, you know, even if we think about the experience of happiness, you know, no one really when that is happening, there isn't a body that has happiness. Happiness emerges. And when we're in the experience of happiness, we lose sense of the body. We lose sense of time. That's why, you know, people say, oh, time goes by when you're having fun. It goes by really fast when you're having fun, right? No, it's just you're unaware of time when you're having fun. There's a timelessness aspect or a timelessness nature of joy. So when we talk about spiritual experiences, it's just another way of the mind comparing a moment in time that's different from right now. And so the practice, it's funny because the practice of, all the signs of point is going to always come back to right now, right now, right now. Because this is the only place salvation takes place. This is the only place salvation exists. Every time we get on the timeline, that's funny, no pun intended, every time we get on the timeline. Every time we get on the timeline, we will suffer. And the way the mind thinks, believing it's separate, is always thinking, well, I need to get on the timeline because I have to, I'm in charge of this body. I'm in charge of protecting it. I just read a line before where it says, and seek not safety by attempting to protect yourself where it's not. When we're on the timeline, we're trying to protect ourselves. Let me protect my future. Let me run to something, or let me run away from something. Let me seek a pleasure. Let me run away from a pleasure. All this stuff is all suffering. And so we're bringing it back to the immediacy of salvation. And I'll read this last part, which I just think is the kicker. And for me, it just lands so perfect. It says, so will the year begin in joy and freedom. Okay, there is much to do, and we have been long delayed. Accept the holy instant as this year is born, and take your place, so long left unfilled in the great awakening. Make this year different by making it all the same. Make this year different by making it all the same. So what is in our experience that has never changed? And that can never be answered in words. But whatever that is, whatever the recognition of what is unchanging, let that be the portal. To the best of our ability, let that be the portal of where we live. Let that be our home. It's hard to trust that, we still think we need to get into the world and make things happen. And that doesn't mean things won't happen. Things are going to happen. The difference is that they're going to emerge from your home, your true home, from your Christ mind. Not a personal Christ mind, but the holiness, the wholeness, so that everything that's done in the world is done with the whole. I like the idea of one movement happening. One movement. You ever see the birds when they fly in their group of birds flock? It moves as one organism. Or if you look at a school of fish, they're swimming together and they're taking different shapes, and it's one organism. There isn't one fish there deciding, I'm going to go this way or that way. It's in one movement. It's all changing shape and form for the benefit of the whole. The whole purpose of doing that is that protects them from the predators. Same thing with the birds. They move together to protect themselves from predators. But it's not like one bird saying, okay, I'm in charge. Let's go this way. No. There's communion. I read a quote regarding communication. There's communion with the whole. So what this is an invitation to is to the portal, to this presence, and recognize that grace is in charge, has always been in charge, and has your best interests. And so there's an invitation to live in this, live as, not even in this, is live as this awareness. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining me, and what a joy. I mean, this is just so joyful for me to extend, and I'm with you in this. Yeah, I'm with you. That's all I can say. Joined with you, and I love you all. I will give a last moment. If anybody wants to share, there's no rush. Please do share. This is an opportunity. Just take yourself off of mute and say whatever you want to share if you decide that is the case.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing to what you just said. What's really helped me this week, or the past few months actually, is slowing down, going really slow, like with everything. And like when I go really slow, I can start to realize like my thoughts. Like I realize I'm like rushing to the kitchen and like, oh, I got to do this. I'm like, wait, why do I have to do that? I go, because I have to get all this music done, or I have to get this done. And I'm like, wait, do I really have to do that? And it's like the ego like tries to trick you with a list of stuff that you have to do, and you really don't have to do it. Like when you sit down, I've been like writing it down, and it's like so hard while you're in the middle of it because the ego's like, no, you got to go do a bunch of stuff, and you realize that you don't, and it's just like a trick to keep you distracted from your true nature. Yeah, I noticed like different like postures I'd be in and stuff, and then when I'd be thinking certain thoughts, and like how it affects your body and stuff. Like yesterday I noticed like I clamp up my hands when I was on the train, and I was like, wait, what? Why am I doing that? When I like my ego's like making me uncomfortable, but because I have to do something or whatever. But you really don't have to do anything. And then what you said about the fish and the birds, that was great, because I've been thinking about like it's easy when you like live like you're dancing, like everywhere it's like a movement, and that's helped me too. Like, okay, just smoothly move everywhere, and that feels really good. So that's really helped me. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy.
And this is Mark. Yeah, I just want to thank Rick for the exercise that he led us through. I found that really impactful. I really did get a sense of being more free of the stuff that I've used to define myself, and coming back to that just place of, I guess I would call it just pure sentience, where you just kind of know you are, but without any definition needed. And you sort of see that in a baby's face, when my daughter was born and just a young child, just a baby, you could just see the way she looked at the world without judgment, and the innocence was just all over her face and in her eyes, and I think that's the place that we all want to come back to, and where we're headed, and so we have these layers that we've built up on top of our lives from the time we were babies, and we really haven't gone anywhere. We've just placed all these layers on top of us or in front of us, and so coming back is not really, well, it's coming back in a way, but you've never really left. You just put all these layers in front, and that exercise was removing those layers and coming back. So anyway, thanks Rick for that, and thanks Craig for having these meetings. I thoroughly enjoy them, and looking forward to see you sometime next week or the week after when I'm out there. So thanks.
No, I just want to say, man, it was absolutely my pleasure, and I'm glad it had the effect, because that's why I wanted to share that exercise, because it just hit me so hard. It's like, how can I not share that with anybody that's just even wants to turn my ear, or their ear, just a little by way, and have just a little willingness to go, okay, let's try it, see what happens. Just that little bit of curiosity, like, I can help you be free, which is all I want, because that's what I want for myself. And so thank you, man, for telling me that had an impact on you, because it just feels good. And something that Craig said earlier too was he was talking about grace, and it wasn't long ago that I had this idea that grace was always just this beatific thing, right? But there is also, and I think it was Adyashanti, if anybody's ever heard of him, that talks about fierce grace, right? Grace can put any face it wants, just like we can, right? Sometimes, we need fierceness because that will get our attention, to smack us upside the head and say, pay attention, I'm here. What? Because we're not paying attention. And I think as I look back to my own life, that fierce grace has brought me here with you guys. Right? Because the suffering got to be too great. I couldn't take it anymore. It's like, man, my life's not working. I got to do something different. Right? Right? So it's like it's all that divine play. It's all of it. And man, how easy is it to forget that in any given moment and not go, oh, this is just fierce grace showing up. I don't think that when my wife is yelling at me or my boss is getting down my neck because I'm late or something. Right? I'm not thinking that at all. Oh, it's just fierce grace. I'm thinking, man, what's his problem? But that's the whole thing, right? That's the place to notice. Oh, I did that to myself because I wanted this. I wanted that experience, right? And I always forget. It's just a game we're playing, and we all take it way too serious. So, like I said, I like to talk. The more I talk about this, the better I feel. So I want to thank y'all for the opportunity, and I don't want to get too carried away here, because I will.
Thank you, Rick. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. It's such a joy to see all your faces and to join with you and have you in this room. And yeah, until next time, I love you so much. Big hug to everybody. Bye, guys.